So you want to buy a car dealership. You might think the money in a car dealership comes from the cars on the lot. It doesn't. When a customer comes to you to buy a new pickup truck for $60,000, you'll most likely earn less from that sale than a Starbucks barista does in a single shift. But over the next 5 years, whilst your customer is driving that car, you'll make thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars from them. To do this, however, you first need to decide exactly how you're going to enter this business. The cheapest way is to become an independent used car dealer. You rent a tarmac-surfaced site somewhere in the suburbs, buy a batch of second-hand cars at auction, put up a sign, and you've got a business. A license costs from $100 in Nebraska to $2,000 in California, plus an insurance deposit of up to $50,000. The total startup cost is around $150,000, most of which goes towards stock and your staff's wages. You're not tied to any particular manufacturer, you sell whatever you like. But there's no marketing support from the manufacturer and no one brings you new models every year. This is the cheapest way, but also the riskiest. Your investment, or rather your cars, lose value every day whilst they're sitting on the forecourt. But let's leave that to the less well-off. The real money in this industry is made in a completely different way, by purchasing an official franchise from a specific manufacturer. You gain the right to sell new Toyotas, Fords, and BMWs within a specific geographical area. The manufacturer grants you exclusive territory, provides advertising support, and most importantly, you gain access to the most profitable part of the business, servicing and finance. But to run all of that, you'll need serious money. A standard mid-range franchise, Ford, Chevrolet, Honda in a decent metro area, will run you around $10 million to get up and running. That covers the land, the building, and enough working capital to survive the first year while you build your customer base. A luxury brand like Porsche or Land Rover starts at $30 million, mostly because their required facility standards are much higher and the initial inventory is much more expensive. It sounds like a lot to sell someone else's cars, but once you understand where the money actually flows inside this business, you'll see why people pay it and why families keep passing these things down for generations. Most brands have their own selection stages for the right to sell their cars, but going into detail about them is far too boring, and these uninteresting matters should be left to your assistant. What matters to you is that there's a room inside every dealership where the real money is made and the customer never sees the numbers being written down. The average net margin on a new car in the United States is between 2 and 4%. In other words, if a customer buys a Ford pickup for $60,000, the dealership makes about $2,000 on the car itself. You have to admit that's not all that much, but the dealership makes its real money in 3 other ways, which the buyer usually doesn't even realize until after they've signed all the paperwork and bought the car from you. The first is what the industry calls a holdback. When a manufacturer sends a car to a dealership, it sets an invoice price, the wholesale cost the dealership pays. It then marks it up and sells at retail, which is where the 2 to 4% margin comes from. But on top of that, the manufacturer agrees in advance that after the sale, it will return a couple of percent of the MSRP to the dealership in a separate quarterly payment. At Ford, GM, and Chrysler, the holdback is 3%, and at Toyota, it's 2%. On a car costing $50,000, that's $1,500 in extra hidden profit, which the dealership receives 3 months after the sale. Think back to when you bought a car and the salesman sat in front of you and said, "I'm selling at a loss." Technically, he wasn't lying. He really did sell it to you at or even slightly below the invoice price. What he didn't mention is that the invoice price itself is inflated. The holdback is already baked into it, so on paper he's losing money. In reality, at the end of the quarter, that poor sod gets a check. And when you become that poor sod, on top of that check, you'll earn extra from what's known as dealer cash. Direct payments from the manufacturer for selling specific models. Plus, stair-step incentives, quarterly bonuses for meeting sales targets. A dealership could sell the last 5 cars on its quarterly books at a real loss of $1,000 per car and still earn a $50,000 bonus, simply because it has exceeded the threshold of 300 cars per quarter. If we now add up the holdback, dealer cash and volume bonuses, the actual cost of a car to the dealership could be thousands of dollars lower than the invoice price shown to the customer. The second way to make money in this business is through the department known in the industry as F&I, Finance and Insurance. This is the office where you take the customer once you've agreed on a price. Here, you need to use all your negotiation skills to sell them a loan, insurance, an extended warranty, scratch protection, a ceramic coating, and gap insurance to cover the difference between the car's market value and its insured value in the event of a total write-off. In 2025, the average American car dealership earned $2,534 in net profit from every car sold in this office. That's 1.5 times more than from the car itself. Here's how it works. An extended warranty, which is sold to customers for $3,000, costs the dealership itself $1,200. The gap insurance that you sell for $1,000 would cost $50 a year on your own car insurance policy. The loan you arrange for your customer is actually granted by the bank at a lower interest rate than is shown to customers. The dealership keeps the difference as a commission. This is called the dealer reserve. And the customer who didn't read the numbers in the contract definitely didn't read the fine print at the bottom about who else gets access to their personal data. By the time they're signing that contract, they've already handed over more than they realize. Their name, address, and income goes into databases the dealership shares with lenders and credit bureaus. The same thing happens every time you go online. Your data ends up scattered across dozens of websites you've never heard of. That's exactly how scammers and identity thieves pick out who to target. Someone takes out a loan in your name, and the first you hear of it is a debt collector calling 6 months later. Incogni exists for exactly that reason. They erase your personal information from across the internet, not only from data brokers, but from any specific website you point them to through their custom removals feature. You send the link, a privacy expert takes care of the rest. One authorization is all it takes. After that, Incogni keeps pulling your data down automatically, even when it crawls back. Try it risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to incogni.com/millionaire or scan this QR code and use Millionaire for 60% off. Now back to your future car dealership. But the real goldmine for a dealership is the third department known as fixed operations. That is, servicing and the sale of spare parts. A service hour at a dealership costs the customer around $150, whilst the mechanic is paid $35. The markup on spare parts ranges from 40 to 100%, and most importantly, the service department brings in money every day, regardless of whether the dealership sells any cars that week. This is a stable part of the business, which often covers all the dealership's overheads, such as rent or salaries on its own. In the industry, this is known as fixed operations absorption. If your service department covers 100% of the costs, every dollar from car sales goes straight into net profit. So yes, if you look at this business through the eyes of the owner, it all seems ridiculously simple. You can easily make a lot of money in this business, and you don't have to worry at all about any problems that might threaten you. But as someone with an audience of over 20,000 millionaires, which is considered a lot in the internet world, I must warn you about the dark side of this business. The main risk in the car dealership business is what is known as floor plan interest. The cars sitting on your forecourt haven't been bought with your own money. They're financed by a bank, usually through a credit line worth tens of millions. Every day that a car sits unsold on the forecourt, you're charged interest. In 2022, when interest rates were low, this cost $200, perhaps $300 per car per month. In 2025, with an average rate of 8%, it's already over $500. A dealership with 200 cars on the forecourt pays around $100,000 a month simply for the right to keep them there. If sales fall by as little as 20%, this financial burden could put the business out of business within 6 months. The second big risk is the manufacturer itself. In the United States, a manufacturer has the right to terminate a franchise agreement for a number of reasons: failure to meet sales targets, breaches of service standards, or insufficient investment in modernizing the dealership. Over the past 6 years, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles has terminated contracts with over 300 Chrysler Dodge Jeep dealers who failed to meet the requirements. In most cases, the dealership receives some compensation, but it rarely covers even a fraction of what it took to build the business. The years of investment, the customer base, the reputation you'd spent decades building. The third risk is, once again, those stupid regulators. In California, there is a law called PAGA, the Private Attorneys General Act. It allows any employee to file a claim on behalf of all state employees for labor violations. A single claim can cost a dealership millions of dollars. There is a whole industry of lawyers operating in the state who specialize exclusively in suing dealerships. When the state's Dealers Association tried to lobby for restrictions on PAGA 5 years ago, it didn't go through, which is why many Californian dealerships are now simply leaving the state or being sold off. But the biggest pitfall in this industry is so terrifying that it's rarely spoken of openly. It's like Voldemort in the world of car sales, and that is Tesla. Over the past 15 years, Tesla has systematically challenged franchise laws in every state. In 26 states, the company has secured the right to sell directly, bypassing the dealer network. In states where it is expressly prohibited, it finds workarounds, opening shops on Native American reservations, selling cars via its website as out-of-state transactions, or simply letting buyers come and collect them. The National Automobile Dealers Association, NADA, spends tens of millions of dollars every year on lobbying to preserve franchise laws. But the trend is clear. Every 5 years, several states allow manufacturers to sell directly. In 20 years' time, your eldest son, or your youngest if you love him more, who has inherited your dealership, will be selling a brand that has just lost its right to a dealer network. I feel sorry for your son. Car dealerships are over 20% of all retail trade in the United States. They pay more local sales tax than supermarkets, electronics stores, and clothing stores combined. That buys them protection. Over 2 years, Florida dealers put more than $2 million into Ron DeSantis' campaign, and the law he signed tightening the ban on direct-to-consumer sales, with an exception carved out for Tesla, wasn't a coincidence. So the law is on your side. This is a business built around a customer who has just signed a long-term financial contract, and every part of that contract is a separate source of income. Time to pull it all together and answer the actual question. How much money do you make if you do this right? We will cover 2 different options for this business. Option 1. Independent used car dealer. Investment: $150,000 for the license, premises, and initial stock of cars. Annual turnover: $2.5 million. Net profit: $100,000. Payback period: 18 months. Here, you earn only from the difference between the price at which you bought the car and the price at which you sold it after refurbishment. Plain and simple. Option 2. A medium-sized franchise dealership. Investment: $10 million. Annual revenue: $50 million. Net profit: $2 million a year. At that rate, your investment pays for itself in 5 years. 15 years later, you've earned $30 million in net profit and still own the dealership. If you want to go for a luxury brand, Porsche, Land Rover, Mercedes, the entry cost jumps to $30 million, but so does the profit. Annual revenue reaches $150 million, net profit $6 million a year, and payback comes in the same 5 years. Every American who has ever bought a car remembers the moment they walked out and thought they'd won, that the salesman went too low. They did get a great deal. They just thought they were buying a car.